Today we're going to talk about subtracting integers. And same as yesterday, you want to get rid of those double signs. It's going to make your math life so much easier. So for example, when you are subtracting a positive, you are actually subtracting. So 8 minus positive 3 is simply 8 minus 3. And then when you have something like this, 6 minus a negative 1, when you subtract a negative, that means to add. The reason you are adding is I want you to look at this right here. You have the opposite, which is that, of a negative. What's the opposite of a negative? The opposite of a negative is a positive. So, subtracting a negative means to add. So 6 minus negative 1 is simply 6 plus 1. We'll get into that in class tomorrow. So a couple of examples. Don't want you to solve them. Just change the double signs. What would it mean? So 14 minus positive 3 is simply 14 minus 3. For the second example, negative 9 minus a negative 4. Again, this is saying what is the opposite of a negative. Right? So we've got negative 9, and the opposite of a negative is plus 4. And then our last example, same thing. The double negatives, the opposite of a negative is a positive. And the same works for over here in our first example. What's the opposite of a positive? Well, the opposite of a positive is a negative. Okay, so that works with all of them. Now, subtracting with the same sign. So your rule is to add the numbers absolute value. This is the same rule with adding. When you have the same sign, great, all is well, add. And then the answer will have the same sign as the addends. And again, those are just the two numbers you're adding. So, for example, negative 6 minus a positive 15, get rid of those double signs. This is saying what's the opposite of a positive? Well, the opposite of a positive is a negative. So now look at it. I've got a negative 6 and a negative 15. They are both negative, so because they're the same sign, add them. It's 21, and use the same sign answer, negative 21. Example B, negative 7, negative 8. They're the same signs, so add them. 7 and 8 is 15. Use that same sign. It's a negative 15. Example C, negative 3, negative 12. Same signs, add them. 3 and 12 is 15, and it's a negative. When you subtract with different signs, the rule is that you subtract the number's absolute value. It's the same thing. When there's different signs, find the difference between them. And then your answer will have the same sign as the addend, the two numbers, with the greater absolute value. Which number is farther away from 0? That number is going to take the sign. So, for example, negative 8 minus negative 5, double signs. The opposite of a negative is a positive. So if you look at it, are the signs the same or different? They're different, so find the difference between them. Ignore the signs, 8 and 3. What's the difference between 8 and 3? Or, excuse me, I'm saying the answer. What's the difference between 8 and 5? All right, the difference between 8 and 5 is 3. Sorry about that. And then look, which number has the greater absolute value? Is negative 8 farther, or is positive 5 farther from 0 on the number line? Negative 8 is farther away, so your answer is going to be negative 3. With B, positive 4, negative 15. They don't have double signs, but the signs are different, so find the difference between them. Difference between 4 and 15 is 11. Which one has the greater absolute value? 15 is bigger, 15 is farther away from 0, 15 is negative, so it's going to be a negative 11. Alright, example C, what's the opposite of a positive? That's a negative, and 9 minus 7 is simply 2. Just so you see how that works, positive 9, negative 7, difference between 9 and 7 is 2. 9 has the greater absolute value, so it is a positive 2. Alright, finding the distance on a number line. So sometimes you need to find out how far away two numbers are from each other. So for here, we are going to find the absolute value of the difference between the numbers. So we are going to be subtracting with the absolute value. So if I wanted to know in this example here, how far away are negative 4 and positive 5, I need to take negative 4 and I'm subtracting 5, and I need to find their absolute value. So same signs, negative 4, negative 5, that gives me a negative 9, and the absolute value of negative 9 is 9. If I were to count all the steps from here to here, then it's 9 units. So let's look at some examples without the number line. If you need to draw a number line, by all means do that. Alright, you can think of it in your head. But here we need to find the distance, on the number line between 3 and negative 3. So I am subtracting, let me get my pen up here, I'm subtracting 3 minus negative 3, and I'm doing the absolute value of this. So 3 minus negative 3, the opposite of a negative is a positive, and 3 plus 3 is the absolute value of 6, which is just plain old 6. Alright, and our second example, what's the difference between negative 30 and negative 22? If I take negative 30 and I subtract negative 22, but I need the absolute value of that, again, the opposite of a negative 22 is positive 22, but I need to find the absolute value of that. They are different signs. It's a negative 30 and a positive 22, so find the difference between them. The difference between 30 and 22 is 8. 30 has the greater absolute value. 30 is negative, so 8 is negative. What's the absolute value of negative 8? 8. So the distance between negative 30 and negative 22 are 8 units. Last example, alright, negative 6 and 5. Think about that on a number line. Jump from negative 6 to 0, and then 0 to 5. How many numbers are in between? You probably already have the answer. Might help you to visualize that. Doing the actual math, you take negative 6 minus, sorry if you hear my baby in the background here, minus negative 5, and do the absolute value of that. The opposite of a negative, you are adding 5, absolute value. Different signs, so find the difference between them. Oh, I messed up. Could you see my mistake here? Let me back this up. Hang on a second. For some reason, I changed that into a negative 5, and I have no idea why I changed that into a negative 5. It should have been negative 6 minus 5. So let me switch this, because that's going to be different. I am so sorry about that. Let's see. So negative 6 minus 5, they are the same sign, so let me just go ahead and write this again. Alright, same sign, so add them. When you add 6 and 5, you get 11. Keep the same sign, and the absolute value of negative 11 is simply 11. Alright, earlier I said visualize that on a number line. From negative 6 to 0, that's 6 units, 6 steps. And then from 0 to 5, that's 5 steps. 6 plus 5 is 11. That's what you should have come up with. I'm sorry I made that mistake there. Alright, we will be talking about this more tomorrow in class. Alright, see you then.